What's up, guys? Brandon with Strict Vision Athletics. Welcome to this episode of Becoming the 1% Podcast. My guest today is Robert Sherman. He is the co-founder of the Iron Neck. The Iron Neck is an incredible device used to strengthen the neck in both a pre- and a post-injury setting. It is something that I think everybody needs to be implementing into their training, really no matter who you are, no matter what your training modality is, no matter what your level. It is just an amazing, amazing product. We're going to go into the details, the do's and don'ts of how to use it, what it's primarily used for. Hope you guys enjoy. Have fun. Thanks for coming on, Robert. I appreciate it, bro.
Glad to be here.
What brought you to Phoenix?
I've been out here every Thanksgiving since I was young. I got family out here.
Oh, okay.
So whenever we come out, there's always an effort to get in and see if there's a gym or, strength coach that we could meet with. And so I know once we met you and saw that you guys were here, this just the timing worked.
Heck yeah. Take advantage of the trip for more than just enjoying the family, personal side of things. I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
Isn't it cool to see the network of different, like every state has its own little coach or every state has its own gym that's kind of in the, elite class that you can go and I always do that too. Anytime we go to like a new state for vacation or something, I'm like, who's around here? Where are we? I know who's around here. Like it's fun like that.
Yeah. From the early days of the company, we went to a lot of coaches conferences and clinics. And so just getting, whenever we're going somewhere, it's like, all right, are there any high schools we can pop into, any gyms? Yeah. How can you get a few more people, get a little more kind of juice from a trip, right?
Yeah. So what was your background prior to the Iron Neck? What did you have going on?
Yeah, so I've been a bit of a nomad. I grew up in Chicago, and then I went to college in the Northeast. So I went to the University of Rochester. I played golf there. It was a small D3 school, a lot of snow.
Yeah.
But then ended up in D.C. after college, worked a government contracting job for a few years, and got a bit tired of that.
Really? He works for the... What is your technical title right now working for because you're a drone specialist for the government, yes?
I work for rulemaking, drone exemptions and rulemaking for the FAA.
Got it. So yeah.
Yeah, so I worked for Lockheed Martin on a contract for the FAA. And what I tell people is this was the Lockheed Martin work that I can actually tell you about, which was not the cool, exciting stuff that is super secretive. But that also kind of pushed me to, what am I going to do next? This was, around the time of the recession. There weren't a whole lot of jobs out. So decided to go to business school. And that's what brought me to Austin, Texas, which is where Iron Neck is based. So I was in Austin from 2011 to 13, and that's where I met my eventual business partners with Iron Neck. Which happened a couple years afterwards. So after business school, I did what you're supposed to do. I went into consulting, did that for a few years. But a couple years into that, I get a call from my roommate from business school and telling me about this neck strengthening device. He met the owner or the inventor of it. He sold to a bunch of NFL and college teams. And I'm hearing about this and I'm just getting, it's like, oh man, this is a lot of snake oil sound to it, right? And I think that's what a lot of people probably feel when they see our ads is like, this is just total snake oil here.
Right.
But he also sent me this like 50-page Google Doc that had compiled a lot of research and articles on this stuff. And the more and more that I was reading into this, the more clear it was, wow, there's a pretty significant void here, especially amongst youth sports, high school, middle school, up to college too. And so that was kind of the genesis of getting connected with this product and this company. Prior to that, so this was around the same time that I was at business school. Mike Jolly is the guy who invented this. So if you'd ever seen the Joe Rogan post where there's a pool table in the background
and he tries it for the first time,
there's this massive giant of a human that's trying or putting Rogan through the demo.
Yeah.
And that's Mike Jolly. So he played football and wrestled at UCLA in the early 80s. And he had some teammates that went on and had long NFL careers. And, as a result of that, ended up getting brain damage, CTE. And so there was a personal element to this where he, people that he knew, people that he was friendly with, really succumbed to the result of just getting hit in the head a whole bunch of times.
Dozens and dozens of times.
Yeah. And so, that was a bit prior, but, over the 90s and 2000s, he went and did a lot of personal training. he went in, basically started a construction company. And so he went professional in kind of something other than sports, as they'd say. But around that time, he was also coaching high school football still. He was coaching local community college in Southern California. So he was coaching O-line, D-line, and he was seeing, the concussions up close. And so Mike is he's a very kind of inventive mind. It literally took less than 2 weeks for him to go from this concept of how do I strengthen the neck to like reduce these whiplash forces. It seems that this is a central area that's overlooked. And Mike had a 23-inch neck from wrestling. And so, he also looked back and was like, man, a lot of these guys got this stuff, but, I didn't really, ever get, knocked out or any of that stuff. And so he was like, I think my neck was really central to this. So he also was digging into some of this research and seeing these things that were pointing to stronger neck reduces concussion risk. It's the stuff that you'd think is a bit logical, but there just wasn't a whole lot of research around it. So he designed this thing. He had a family member who had a machine shop out in LA that essentially, they're making like NASA rocket components. And so he was able to get in there and make this thing. And, in less than 2 weeks, he had the original prototype, which was this like 13, 14 pound piece of aluminum that, wasn't really designed to be a rehab device, but
definitely not general population friendly.
Definitely not general population.
Prototype material.
Yeah. So, over that year and a half, 2 years that he had developed it, made some iterations to it, he got into about 10 NFL teams, a few dozen D1 college football programs, and the proof of concept was there. It just, he was, I think at the time, selling these for like $900, $1,000. The cost was through the roof. So just from a business standpoint, it wasn't sustainable. And so he wound things down. And then shortly after that, we got connected, and we all, myself and two of my friends from business school, we really put together a game plan to bring this thing back to life. And so that started with a big redesign where we cut it from, 13, 14 pounds down to 6 pounds. This was in 2000.
I was going to ask, what does it weigh now? It's not 13 pounds.
We then went to 3 pounds, and then now the 3.0, which we launched a year ago, is 2 pounds. So any lighter than that, you start to get kind of this cheap toy feel, but it's the neck muscles really wouldn't actually know much of a difference. Functionally, it operates the exact same way.
Because it's not about weight. Your resistance isn't coming from how heavy it is. It's coming from your anchor point, from your resistance band.
Yeah, and that's still a pretty big challenge for people to see this, and because there's this what the fuck am I looking at component that almost everyone starts at when they see iron neck. Like, I don't even know what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
This looks dangerous. This looks like it's
even
gonna hurt someone.
People in the industry react that way. I have a client who goes to a PT. Why he still goes to her, I don't know, but he went to her randomly, and he mentioned like, hey, I've been having neck issues. They all started to go away. My trainer put me on the iron neck, and she was like, what is that? And then he showed her like a video of him doing it, and her reaction was, I'm going to have to do more research, but that looks like it's nonsense. Like that was her from a clinician. That's the reaction she gave. So yeah, it does require, I think, explanation. You almost have to talk people off the ledge before you can even sell them on the product. 'Cause it seems like they have a weird adverse reaction just when they see it.
Yeah, and really it operates off the same principles as if a lot of what you'll see in PT is just the use of like a power band, right? A big rubber band.
Right.
And so if you're doing this standing up, you're engaging not just the muscles in the neck, but all the muscles throughout the kinetic chain. So that's part of what we've recognized over the years is, part of this making it smaller and lighter is, well, how do we have a better experience using it? But the general population also is, you're not going to get away with putting a 13 or even a 6 pound device on, grandma's head or someone who has been, hit in a car multiple times and has had surgery, right? Like, people are starting from different places, but, it's since we redesigned it in 2017, we've had to just continue kind of evolving, who we're selling to and how we're talking about the product. But, at its core, it's still, you could put this thing on and dance and it works, right?
Yeah. Starting with football, I don't know if you've seen this. There's a very viral clip of Brett Favre. I don't even remember the forum he's on, but he's speaking to a podcast of some kind, and he was saying that he doesn't even endorse wrestling, or excuse me, he doesn't endorse tackle football for youths of any age. And what he said is that when he first ended his career, he sat down with his clinician and they asked him, how many times do you think in your career, because you played for so long, how many times do you think you had a concussion? And he said, sort of to what you said about, well, all right, the number of times that I got knocked on my back and I lost consciousness, probably 3, maybe 4. So I would say, being generous, let's say I've had 5 concussions. And they said, okay, well, let me follow up on another question. How many times have you been tackled and you hit the ground, and when you went to sit up, you felt dizzy or you felt lightheaded or it seemed like you saw stars? How many times did anything like that happen? And he said, well, every time you get tackled in the NFL, that happens. And they said, okay, so the actual accurate answer to your question is that you've had concussions ranging in the thousands. You've had thousands of concussions over the course of your career in the NFL. And so that has led you to, an area where you only notice a major concussion, but you are totally neglecting every minor concussion that builds up over and over and over to the point where you get, punch drunk. That type of thing happens a lot to boxers, but also to football athletes. Was that, that was obviously a factor in the creation of this product. Was CTE the primary reason that this was created and brought to market?
Yeah, so the research study that Mike first got tuned into, it started in 2011 and it was ultimately published in 2014. And it was a study of about 7,000 high school male and female athletes across a few different sports. And it showed for every 1 pound increase in neck strength, the odds of concussion decreased by 5%. So this was the first study that really put any numbers on it, right? There were a lot of...
For every 1 pound of neck strength or muscle...
Of neck strength.
Of neck strength decreases your risk of concussion by how much?
5%.
By 5%. Okay.
So essentially, kids with the bigger, stronger necks going to have less severity of concussion than those that have a pencil neck.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the first piece. The second was looking at this rotational aspect, because that's really what makes Iron Neck unique, is that you can
different from a 4-way neck machine or one of the chains that you wear type of thing.
Yeah. And so every impact has some element of a rotational force, right? It's not just in a lab, you get hit in the front of the head and boink, boink, right?
No,
there's always a little bit of a rotational component to it. And so there have been some studies that looked at these torsional forces that are actually reaching, deeper in the brainstem, and these actually being associated with some of the white matter that is present in the brains that you see with CTE. And so there was this concept of, well, let's layer that over our understanding of how the neck actually operates. Is there's no just linear muscles, right? These are all pretty much diagonal fibers. So contracting the neck actually, or these muscles actually results in rotation.
Right.
So he really put all this together, and there was a lot of MacGyver type ingenuity, messing with Pilates bands. How can I maintain this isometric contraction through the muscles, but also go through rotation? And that's essentially, how he got to the design of Iron Neck. I think there's a difference too, depending on like the positions that you're playing, the sports that you're playing. The threat for a wide receiver in football, for example, is very different than that of a lineman. A wide receiver, these are the deke leading shots, the ones that make SportsCenter, right? Yeah. But you also don't need to be hit directly in the head, right? If you're looking one way and you have a body shot from the other side,
it's going to jar you.
The whiplash forces alone can cause a concussion. It can cause damage. You see this in a lot of sports, especially in female sports where you have weaker neck musculature, where falling backwards and that the anterior muscles of the neck are the weakest, right?
We're thinking female soccer.
Female soccer,
yeah. That's got to be the highest one, because that's, just from a mainstream standpoint, what would you say is the highest impact female sport?
Oh, soccer.
Soccer?
Yeah, but
I would have thought so too.
But, you also see volleyball, basketball.
Yeah, that's true. Basketball for sure.
Yeah, we just sold to the UConn women's basketball team.
Nice.
They had some concussions earlier in the year. Coaches find out about us different ways, but they were looking into like, hey, we've got concussions, and neck strength was something that they just weren't really doing much.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things we saw early on, was even amongst, going to the NSCA, the big strength and conditioning coach conferences, you get some guys that are super tuned into it. You have a lot of coaches that are kind of old school, right? Oh, we got the 4 ways, we're going to do that. Or I just like doing manual, but there's also, surprising amount of coaches at the high school and college level that just neck strength, like we're asking, hey, what do you do for your neck strengthening program? And it's like crickets, right? And like to a certain point, there's negligence in this, right? Like there's no research that shows, hey, strengthen your neck muscles, this is going to do damage. If anything, if you're neck bridging in a dangerous way, like you could cause cervical disc issues. But
that's probably the first neck strengthening exercise that because I was a wrestler when I was young. That's the first neck strengthening I ever did, and I actually think it did cause an injury. At the time, not a major injury, but it definitely tweaked something. I had to recoup, and I was young at the time, so it didn't take long. But yeah, I think the neck bridge is probably a bad idea. That's a bad exercise. I think there's better ways to do it.
Yeah, I think with any exercise, there's safe ways, not safe ways, and then a pretty gray area in the middle.
Yeah.
And if you see someone doing a neck bridge with like 25-pound plates on their head, well, maybe they're like a D1 wrestler and they've got a ton of mass and they're not gonna injure themselves, but it can be very easy to do that.
Yeah.
Back to the football injury, you look at linemen, right? And there's been research that shows that in any given game, they're dealing with up to 80 subconcussive injuries or subconcussive blows to the head. Mm-hmm. So if you're trying to mitigate the risk of the damage from those impacts, the approach likely should be different. So, we have different programs and how you can use Iron Neck.
Yeah.
That is essentially based on reverse engineering some of these positions. But, I also think getting rid of football and tackle football is not the solution to this. There's a lot of benefits that you get from playing any team sport.
Sure.
But it's a trade-off like any. And I think, when you have kids and then you're deciding, do I let my kid play football versus, gymnastics or any other sport? There's a ton of injuries in gymnastics, but
right.
These are all things to weigh.
But it does bring up an interesting question. Because you do have to balance safety on everything you do as a parent, especially when it comes to extracurricular activities that are entirely avoidable. Because if you don't start playing, if you want to play tackle football and you actually want to play in college, you have to start as a kid. You have to start as a little kid in Pop Warner. That's your biggest chance of success, is playing that game as long as you possibly can and hoping for the best as far as injury and recovery. This is not something I'm coining. There's a large community of people that would like to see tackle football eliminated entirely from schools, saying that it is just the risk to reward factor there. There's a lot of other team sports kids could play that would get the same, championship mindset, community, teamwork aspect to it without inevitably getting hurt, because it's almost inevitable that you will get hurt. I'll just be generous and say, if you reach college, guaranteed you're getting hurt in football. There's nobody goes and plays football in college that doesn't at least get hurt a couple times. And I think to a lot of parents, the juice is not worth the squeeze. If I have a 6-year-old who is starting to like sports, well, maybe I try to get him in lacrosse. Maybe I try to get him playing golf. Maybe I try to get him doing anything other than tackle football. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you see a lot of concussions and head injuries in sports like lacrosse as well. Football's not, like the NFL's not going anywhere, right?
No.
So the decision eventually is it's happening at the household level, and parents are going to make those decisions. Some of the stuff that has changed quite a bit in the 10 years since this product was first invented is the awareness of head injuries has come a long way. I'd say there's a pillar approach that you have to take when it comes to safety for a lot of really any school or sport. One is just the awareness. So if we're talking about football, awareness of your surroundings, how to tackle. A lot of this stuff has come up through like USA Football, and how do you actually train kids when they're young to keep their head up, right?
Right.
Because that's a huge piece to it. There's been changes to the rules, right? So even, high school, college, but NFL level where everyone's watching is
Do not hit Tom Brady.
yeah, do not hit Tom Brady, and do not lead with your head, offense or defense, right? You will be penalized for this stuff. And there's this reaction that people initially have, oh, this is like ruining the game. And it's like, well, the game's got to evolve.
Yeah. Do you want the game to be around? Well, then they need to ruin your game, or at least your perception of it, a little bit, because there's a lot of, personally, I know we have family friends that played in the NFL that today have irreversible neurological damage, that they have to, get in a hyperbaric chamber 5 times a week. They have to do all of this crazy stem cell work. They have to do this stuff now. They played for the NFL for 4 or 5 years. And that's generous, and that's such a small window of time. But to get to that point, the amount of damage you have to take. You mentioned the O-line. I think they said on the defensive line, on average in the NFL, it's the equivalent of getting into like a 20-mile-an-hour car accident every single snap. That's crazy. That's a lot of impact.
Yeah, these are the largest and fastest humans that
So
exist.
fast. You can't believe something that big can move that fast. I remember watching Terrell Suggs do his 40s. And one time I was bringing, I was bringing water to the line. And this is when I was an intern, so I was little. I was never the biggest guy out there, but then especially not. And I remember I was looking a direction I shouldn't have been. I wasn't paying attention to where I was. I walked almost into the lane that he was running his 40s, and he whooshed by me, and I froze. And of course the code, pull your head out of your ass. You're about to get left. And you just can't even believe that something that big could move that fast. And I don't remember what his 40 time was. Do you remember what Terrell Suggs' 40 time was? Let me look that up. But it's so incredibly fast and so incredibly big, the men that play that sport. So just the danger is there.
You almost got Terry Tated there.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Yeah, one of the other big changes, and this is probably the last like 4 or 5 years, was the contact in practice, because they're seeing a lot of concussions that were actually happening in practice. And can you take that, the real hits out of practice and still not lose a step and prepare different ways? So I think, a lot of these things are...
He ran a 4.8. He ran a 4.8 440. He was about 275 pounds.
Yeah, it's a lot of momentum.
It's a lot of momentum for someone so big.
Yeah, football is one of those things that even when you're at a game, you're not generally close enough to really see and appreciate how big these humans are. And I was on a field for a Bucks-Bears game a couple months back, and you just, like, the tight ends are NBA like power forwards or centers, and like these are just large men. So the other pillar that I think there's probably a lot more focus on than there should be is protective equipment. There's so much focus on helmets that come with a sticker on them now because of past lawsuits that say this is like smoking kills, right, on cigarettes.
Right. Yeah.
This will not prevent concussions,
yeah.
right? And so, but it doesn't stop parents from spending $500 to $1,000 on the top of the line helmet. And so, there's been development there.
Definitely, they've come a long way with the impact of do you know the minutia of the design of the helmet? What they've done? I mean, more padding. I assume?
Well, so there's some different technologies that have been deployed. So there's some companies that have tried a softer shell that had more shock absorption capabilities within it. So can you reduce the rotational forces from the outside of a helmet where that impact is happening that ultimately reach the head, right? That's one area. There's a company called Light Helmets that makes it's a lighter helmet, right? So the extreme is think of a pencil neck and a big old bobbly head up there. You're going to have a lot more movement. And so you think about middle school, like Pop Warner, up to high school kids, where you're still developing.
Yeah, you're so
and what do you think is going to happen when you put more mass up there if you haven't developed the neck muscles, which is the case in a lot of scenarios. So yeah, it's probably a bit of a crutch, but it's the safe default reaction. It's, oh man, they're going to get hit in the head. Well, let me make sure my kid's got the best helmet, right? But that doesn't solve things when you're talking about inner city schools that aren't going to have funding for anything, right? Well, so what? they've got to deal with like these other heavier helmets. It's just not the solution. So really for any sport, there's a multi-pronged approach you've got to take. And neck strength is just one of those pieces, right? You can have the strongest neck in the world, but if you're tackling like a dummy, you're going to get hurt. You're going to hurt someone else. So you've got to be able to do all these things, right?
Your technique, your equipment, and your training all have to be deployed properly in order to avoid injury is basically what I'm hearing. Yeah. No, I think it's a very, very undervalued part of the human body, training the neck. Not even just for high level athletics. And that's also something that I've loved, especially since you guys have come on the scene. It seems like this is becoming much more mainstream than it is just elite athletics. For a while there, that is the direction that it went. It seemed like, your high level combat sports and your NFL, that was the demographic of people that knew about the iron neck, or just the people that knew about neck strength in general. Now it seems like it is becoming a lot more mainstream, a lot more public. Maybe coaches, like you said, there's biohackers that'll be interested in this, but it does seem like now your everyday individual is starting to wonder whether or not this would benefit him or her. How have you guys seen that in your market? How has that come to pass?
Yeah, I mean, the first few years that we, when we rebooted the company in 2017, the first few years, we were still going to all these strength and conditioning coach conferences, athletic trainers, athletic directors, trying to just get to any stakeholder at a high school or college level.
Yeah.
And, but we had also cut the weight down to 6 pounds. And then a year and a half, 2 years after that, we had cut it to 3 pounds. And that was the second generation where we had finally gone to injection molding, so it was lighter. And we had made several iterative improvements to make the fit a little bit better, a little bit more comfortable. So along that way, we were starting to get into the doors of more PT clinics, chiropractors, people that would kind of give this thing a shot. And we've got a 30-day trial, so let me try this. I'm going to return it anyways. And then most of these people thankfully kept it.
Keep it. Yeah.
But then we ran into COVID, right? And so every school was initially shut down, and there was no kind of foresight on like when are things going to open. So even coaches, they didn't know when they'd have the next budget cycle open to be bringing kids back. So fortunately, leading up to that, we had kind of gotten our website into a bit better shape, and we became more of an e-commerce company. And so with that, we still had this injury prevention component to it, which had become much more focused on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is this kind of never-ending cycle of injury prevention, rehab, rehab. And this is also a population that, like, when they are sidelined, they will sell their soul to, a limb to get back on there, right? You never stop thinking about it. It becomes your whole life. So, and we got to know this market very, very well. But we also on the PT side of things, and just people that were buying this for, their home use, like, we have some of the garage gym type users who might have some neck issue, but grandma's using this thing as well, right? There was a geriatric population that, as we were getting down to 3 pounds, it's finally, okay, this is a bit more approachable. And so, that, and then plus, starting to develop more training protocols that were very specifically focused on, hey, if you're coming in at, early stage rehab, we can hold your hand to make sure that you're using this the right way. This isn't going to tear your head off like you might initially think when you see this thing. But we also had designed combat sport programs, tactical athlete. We sold a lot of military, firefighters, first responders. And then contact sports is kind of still obvious there. So that has continued to grow. Jiu-jitsu is not going to go anywhere because the neck is kind of target one, but it's offense and defense in jiu-jitsu, right?
Right.
But yeah, everything now from like just forward head posture, tech neck, people sitting at desks.
Yeah.
I mean, we hear from dentists who are like, I use this thing a few times a day now.
The client I told you about, he's a dentist. The client I told you about who went to his PT with it, he's a dentist. It's also just people, any person, every person. We're all looking at our phones. We're all looking at our computers. We're all looking down all the time. And that's causing, I mean, you're seeing it. I can see when they walk around, people that don't do corrective training or do oftentimes any sort of training, they sit like this.
If you are a human in 2023, you likely have forward head posture to a certain degree. And there's also elements that, like, even if when you're laying in bed, right, and you just have your chin all the way down, right, even though gravity's working a different way, you're still actually creating these muscle imbalances, right? You've got your posterior chain that's super extended. You've got everything scrunched up in the front. And so that's kind of at the core of like what Iron Neck actually does, is that because you have this 360-degree component to it, and you're able to engage the muscles at every side of the neck isometrically, it starts to reduce these muscle imbalances, and it helps improve posture. And just turns out when you improve posture, a lot of these downstream impacts kind of go away. It's fixing the root cause of it. But really the root cause of this is, who's actually going to the gym and strengthening their neck muscles?
Yes.
No one's looking at a 4-way machine and being like, yeah, I want some of that. But
it's the neglected, I'd say it's probably the single most neglected body part, or just area of the body, because it's multiple body, tons of muscles. But we were talking about this prior to going live. I mean, if I'm at the gym and let's even say I'm more than a weekend warrior. Let's say I'm actually somebody who goes to the gym 5-6 days a week. But I know I only have an hour, and I know I've got to go pick up my kids, and I got to get ready for Thanksgiving and all of this and all of that. What's the last thing I'm probably going to do if I go in there? I'm probably not going to go in there and work on my neck. It's just probably not going to happen. And that's a real shame, because you mentioned using it for offense and defense when it comes to high-level athletics. Well, that same mentality can be applied to just your everyday life. I mean, you don't know if you're going to get into a car accident. You have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, this is a defensive precaution. You don't have to have a neck injury to work your neck in a defensive manner for what may end up happening to you.
Yeah, we actually we have a friend now who he was a fitness trainer. He had that presence on Instagram, or he put out a lot of fitness content. And in the course of, it was less than a year, I think it was in the course of like 9 months, he was rear-ended at a red light twice.
Twice?
Wow. Yes. And so
seriously?
he had surgery after both of these incidents.
What?
So he went from, like fitness, he was a very healthy guy, to being in this position that he has uncertainty if he will, what am I going to lose out on for the next, the guy's in his mid-20s, the next 60, 70 years of his life.
He's mid-20s and he's now had 2 neck, and he was at a red light. It wasn't even his fault at all. That sucks.
Yeah. And so, yes, if you have a strong neck.
Can you tell us who he is?
His name's Sean Alexander.
Sean Alexander? Is it SEAN?
Yeah.
Did you guys ever see that video? It's like a viral video with a taxi driver.
Right here?
Yeah, so actually you go
Give
down
him
a little bit.
Follow. Yeah, he's got. Yeah, oh, dude. That's terrible.
Yeah, so he.
Oh, that's rough.
So he's actually in Austin. He discovered Iron Neck. He also got a dog recently.
Oh, that's cool. It's like
so he actually, he got Iron Neck, but he was working very closely with his PT on this, right? And this, this kind of talks about the perception of this product is this safe for me? But even though you're looking at someone who's in his 20s, super fit, strength trains all the time.
Yeah.
Even if you have a strong neck, you get rear-ended by a car going 50 plus miles an hour.
Yeah. You're going to get hurt. It's just a matter of how bad.
Right. And so, the difference of having some neck strength versus basically nothing, maybe that makes a small bit of difference, but it also brings you, like, when you're going into rehab, you're at least at a higher baseline, right? So, we have customers that are buying this pre-surgery, post-surgery. And if you're able to do a little bit before you go into a surgery, at least you're coming out kind of in a better position. You can make a little bit more progress. So, he, in the past few months that he's been kind of using Iron Neck and building on it and starting very light, like our lightest band and just very basic movements, he's made a ton of progress. And, so yeah, it's interesting to kind of see some of these scenarios.
The design of your product itself is actually very, very smart. And I'm speaking specifically to what you just mentioned as far as like the different bands. For those of you guys who don't know, and I'm playing a video here that'll actually really show it kind of well. The bands can be adjusted up or down. So you have a progress or regress sort of option for you. That's really cool, actually. That's a great video. I clicked on the right one. But long story short, you don't have to have a strong neck to even attempt this. I mean, the lightest band, your level 1, is almost like it's not there. Like it's very, very light.
It gives you a bit more space to hit lower resistance levels. So we have 5 bands. The one that ships standard is our 0 to 25 pound band. This is kind of the Goldilocks band.
Sure.
And so, if you step a foot out or extended a foot, you're basically at like 4 or 5 pounds of resistance, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of tension in the band is really all you need to start. But if you have our 5 or 10 pound band, you can step out, 2 or 3 feet to get to that same level of resistance. And so it's just like, if you are on that end where you are a bit more fragile, you're starting from a lighter point, it's maybe a little less intimidating. You realize, okay, I can do this, versus like our 50 pound band, you step out 1 foot, you're already at like 12 pounds, right?
Yeah.
Like this is, you got to have a pretty big, strong neck to go for those.
That's another thing you mentioned, the intimidation factor. I mean, I can tell you that when I get clients here, especially clients that are, like a grandma or not somebody that would do this on their own. In the beginning, it's a little bit off-putting when they see it, because it's like, what is that? But then once I show them how to do it, which really takes all of 25 seconds, they're like, oh wow, okay, I get this. Like it's not at all uncomfortable. It's the same as like wearing a hat or wearing a bike helmet. That's the best way that I can really come to describe it. It's just like putting on a bicycle helmet. It feels the same.
Yeah, I've found over the years there tends to be a little bit more of a comfort curve than a learning curve how to use it. Although there are plenty of people that'll put this thing on and immediately try to go flexion extension like a traditional harness, and you get immediate feedback that that's not how this device works, because I'm scrunching down. So yeah, it's a bit different, but I think a trade-off that you see in a lot of other exercises is this one that you have to trade strength for mobility, or mobility for strength. And the design of this is one that, hey, you can actually, at very light resistance or very high resistance, go through your full range of motion. And what we see is people that, we have reviews from people, and people have come up to us and told us stories in person, like, I couldn't parallel park my car, and like now I can, right? And it's like such a silly thing to hear, but for some people it's like that you've kind of resorted to, this is how the rest of my life is going to be. I'm not going to be able to turn this way. Or, hey, I'm going to have pain if I'm turning at 20 degrees either direction. So
my father got rear-ended in 1994, I want to say it was. Had a total cervical neck fusion. He's been in pain every single day until about, I want to say maybe a year and a half ago, when I got him this for Christmas. And he, same thing, what is that? I don't know if I can do that, like, bud, with my neck. I'm like, no. Trust me. This will work for you. Give it a month, give it a couple weeks, and see if it makes. I mean, he's not here, but I will actually get a testimonial from him and send it over to you guys. He's in his mid-60s, so this is a really good testimonial to hear. Somebody who's been in pain for that long from something that happened so long ago, and now it's been reversed. And he plays pickleball, so everything he does is from that down position in a neck flexion type of area. So he's always been in pain. And now, like you said, he's no longer resorting to the fact that, oh, this is just how I'm going to live. Now it's actually, it's amazing to be able to actually see that there is something out there that will at least partially reverse the side effects of having a total fusion and a car accident. So I could tell you firsthand, that's just one. That's probably the most extreme example I can come up with, but that's a good example of what this product can do.
Yeah, a lot of the reviews and testimonials that we get are from people who've had this whatever problem they had for quite a long time. And what seems to be the consistent theme is, I tried everything else, right? I got the massage guns, the rollers, the creams.
Went to the chiro.
Go to the chiro. And these things all help. And like, I'm not hating on these things. I've got all these things too. I love them, right?
Right, yeah.
But none of these things are actually treating the root cause of these issues, which in a lot of cases is weak neck muscles, right?
Yeah.
So that's really the secret sauce, is we're just fixing the thing that most people aren't really even aware that it can fix it, right? Like we often say, like, our biggest competition is just the lack of understanding that neck strengthening can correct neck pain, because it's kind of counterintuitive, right? Like I don't want to, I noticed early at these conferences that we go to, and these guys that just walk up, they can't turn anything. It's the I'm fine mentality, right? It's not good. It's not as bad as it's been. I'm fine where it's at. that thing looks like it's going to make it worse. No
Yeah.
thanks. Right.
Exactly. Because you think it's counterintuitive, I think, with a lot of injury sites, because it's not, the answer is almost never, oh, you have an injury. All right, well, go get work done, go get massage, and that's it. No, that's half of what it is. You need to get work done. Maybe you need to go to the chiro, but then you also need to find out how to strengthen the region. You got to figure out a way to, especially in the beginning of the injury, non-invasively stimulate the muscles, the area, get some patterns of movement going, and activate the region and strengthen it. So your product solves a big gap in that market, because until I found your product, like you said, there was that 4-way neck machine that the footprint on that thing was as big as this table. I never used it, really. Like I said, I did neck bridges when I was in wrestling, but until I found your product, I really didn't have anything that I would routinely use to fill that gap in my training to strengthen the neck, as opposed to, my neck hurts, I'll just go get a massage. I'll get, that done, and now it'll be okay again for another couple days, but then it will inevitably start bothering me. Maybe I slept weird. Like, gone are the days where that happened to me. I used to have that happen all the time. I used to sleep weird because I sleep on my back. So if I sleep on my back and I turn my head in the night, well, then I would wake up with a pain in the side that was turned. And that would happen, semi-infrequently. It happened once every couple of months, but it would still happen. I honestly don't think that's happened to me in over a year and a half, maybe 2 years has that happened to me. And I do accredit a lot of that to the Iron Neck. I think it is a big and very unique piece of equipment that solves a big problem.
Some of the feedback that we heard from PTs, independent of Iron Neck, was just some of the challenges with compliance of neck strengthening, and then also how are they actually doing it, right? So if you're laying on a bench and just doing chin tucks, right? Well, if you have someone with hip issues, you can't really put them in that position to do that. You can hold a band, right, out and apply resistance that way. But if you have shoulder issues, you can't do that. So this is something that you can put it on, you can use it in a very progressive nature, and it solves for some of those. On the strength and conditioning side, like in a high school setting, the most common neck strengthening modality is manual resistance, right? You partner up, you got one kid on
a towel,
or you have one kid on all fours, and you put your leg up against their head, and it is free, but I've also learned there's nothing that's free, right?
Yeah.
There's the issues that you have with that is how many coaches are going to raise their hand and say, oh yeah, I trust every high school kid that I've got to do this the right way, right? Even if you're training right, it just takes one kid to not do it well, and that kid doesn't develop the strength in the same way, and then this kid gets injured, and so that that's one issue. The other is is this kid applying 5 pounds of resistance, 10 pounds, 20 pounds? You just have no real control or idea of and a lot of strength coaches really want to have control over what are they programming. Each kid's kind of on an individual basis. Are they, able to be challenged in the right way? So Iron Neck, again, was something that was able to solve for that.
You touched on something that we talked about prior to the episode going live, which is the value of value, and exactly how people assign value and how they are oftentimes really reluctant to do so. And I think kind of what you guys are doing and what we're doing is a little similar in this, in that neither one of our products we sell are cheap. I don't do anything cheap, but I said something that I want to say here live as well. I don't think there's ever been a product that I have had to go to bat for more when it comes to either affiliate marketing or promotion or just word of mouth endorsement than the Iron Neck. I mean, the Iron Neck, what's the retail cost on the Iron Neck right now?
$349 and $599.
And the difference being what?
Is just the Pro model has a variable friction dial, so you're able to apply friction and resistance as you rotate. So similar to a spin bike. For those
of you guys listening, get that version. I'll just say that. I mean, I've never had the other one. I've only ever had the one that had the dial, but I use the dial almost with every client. I adjust it. So do that. The point is, they see this, what most people would look at and be like, what is this like? Is this a cable attachment? Why in the world is this $600? Why in the world is this $400? But again, value is what are you going to get away from this product? What exactly are you going to get out of it? Are you somebody who is actually in pain? Well, would you not pay $400 to not have that be the case 5 days out of the week? Where that's, again, where I think there is commonality between what we sell, which is, an extremely exclusive elite training experience, and what you guys sell, which is an extremely elite and exclusive piece of equipment designed to fix like a problem. And I think it's interesting that, like I said, I have never ran into a product that I have so heavily endorsed that has been met with so much backlash.
Yeah, I think when you look like a medieval torture device, and then the solution that you offer is something that most people aren't even doing to begin with. So they're not even tuned into like, wait, so I have to understand that this is a benefit that I'm not even tuned into. You're going to get that. Yeah. But, something that really unites, I'd say pretty consistently across all of our customers, is the value on longevity, right? Can you do what you love longer? And the people that, buy our product, that's what's important to them. And this is, if you're doing jujitsu in your 20s or 30s, and you start to get these injuries, you can see, and this is much more clear, jiu-jitsu guys that are in their 40s or 50s, because they're starting to deal with this stuff, and you've been fighting gravity longer, right? So this is just something that's super important. And when you lose that thing, you don't really appreciate it until that point, right?
And I think I should clarify, when I say that I've had to go to bat, I'm not talking about just, oh, this is too expensive, I can never buy it. It's, I don't think I need that. I don't really get that. What is that? Why does it cost so much? I'm not a professional athlete. What in the world would I do with that? All of those types of questions come up. It requires, and to the credit of your company and everything you guys are doing, you provide a lot of education on your side. That's very, very important when you are providing something and you're trying to push a product that is, as I said, you have to talk people off the ledge before you even start the process of selling them the product.
Yeah, if you look at adults, right? So you take like youth sports out of the mix. Mm-hmm. The physical therapist is where the majority of neck strengthening actually starts with people, right? This is completely reactive. The injury has happened, and now, hey, as part of your rehab, you need to strengthen your neck, right? And so fortunately, like that's where we meet a lot of our customers.
Me too.
But, right, they say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? And I think most people don't have an appreciation for that. The biohacker community, like we talked about,
that's great.
They're tuned into that, right? They're like, hey, I'm getting this, I'm paying more, but that's because I see, hey, this is going to provide value over the next 20, 30, 40 years of my life. And it's why honestly, it's why you should make most decisions, right? If you're focused on value, it's, hey, this thing is going to fix my problem now, but also I'm not going to be that hunched over, grandparent that you see walking down the grocery store aisle, with extreme kyphosis, right? This is something that, and we actually have an active aging program because...
No kidding.
Yeah. The whole development of the exercises around Iron Neck really started around just these 6 foundational movements. If you do those, or honestly, if you pick 2 of those.
What are they exactly? Your 6 foundational
The 6 foundational movements. Yeah. So you have the 360 spin, look left, look right. You have protraction, retraction.
Yep, that's a big one.
You have lock, neck, body turn. And then you've got diagonals and figure eights. Yep. And so originally we just had these 6 and we were like, hey, do these. And then we started seeing, hey, some customers are like going a little too aggressive right when they start, right? It's like, this is something that is meant to pace yourself, especially if you've not done any neck strengthening before. You're taking this out and it's like, maybe you should follow the IKEA directions than try to do this thing on your own. And then you get to, step 67 and you realize that you messed up on step 4. But so then the next thing we did was we broke these into 3 phases, right? So the 360 spin and the look left, look right. Let's get confident and comfortable within these. And really what's most important is, like, step 1 is just, can you get into a neutral retracted position and hold that for a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because what you don't want to do is have this thing on and this be forward head posture,
Yeah.
and then do a 360 spin, and it's going to pull you and you're not centered. So we broke it into 3 phases. That was a good step, but we still didn't have something that really catered directly to, the MMA fighter and grandma, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what we did was we stepped back, we did kind of a deep analysis of all of our customers and identified really 8 distinct customer segments that we sell to. And so we designed programs around that. Everything, we have early stage rehab, posture mechanics. Those are our 2 most popular ones. We have an active aging, a tactical athlete, combat sport athlete, contact sport athlete. And then we have a more rehab focused program around upper cross syndrome. And so that provided a bit more of a handheld experience, but
It's very comprehensive.
yeah. And,
I can't think of anybody not in one of those categories.
yeah. And, since then we've also seen kind of where people are falling and, where people's interests and focus are. But, and that has actually informed some of the programs we're actually literally shooting last week, next week.
Right.
And they're a bit more rehab focused. So, there's a program around levator scap, which is, basically kind of the prime muscle that's being strained with tech neck and forward head posture. And then, other things around like vagus nerve pain to really just trying to provide a more handheld experience with better cues to the individual that is using this very strictly for rehab.
Yeah.
But the rehab side also is, a lot of jujitsu injuries where even if you're not proactively strengthening your neck, you're building strength just through the activity itself.
Yeah.
But then, the Instagrammer who's just, hunched over their phone all the time, like very weak. I mean, talk about like pencil neck position. So we need to be able to design something that is able to get these people comfortable and, progressing as quickly as possible. Because like you said, like once you get this thing on and you use it, it's not as scary. You actually feel it. It's like, wow, that actually felt really good.
I've actually got muscles in my neck.
Right, I've got
great.
muscles.
You get a pump. That's I tell people I every once in a while I'll go live or something while I'm doing it just because it's immediately as soon as people see you doing that they don't leave. And I'll tell them, be like, this is like, you have to try this to experience it. If you train, and this may take a couple sessions to get here, but if you train semi regularly and you start doing this, just like your biceps or your chest, if you train on the iron neck, you get like a 360-degree pump in the muscles surrounding your neck. And it's like anything else. There's nothing unique about your neck muscles. They break down and they build up based on how you train them and how you recover. And it's the exact same thing. You do it and you get stronger.
Yeah.
It's legit.
Time under tension goes a long way.
That's right, bro.
Yeah. If you haven't already, I mean, you said that you use the variable friction dial quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
That is the best way to get that pump at the end of a session. So if you're starting with no rotational resistance added and you're going through some of the movements, maybe it's a bit more mobility focused.
Yeah.
You can kind of increase the linear resistance to the band each set. You can also crank up a little bit more on the rotational resistance. And so if you're doing that at the end and you really crank it up, I mean, you will not be able to fit in any dress shirt if you've got to button that all the way to the top after that.
It's noticeable, like in the way that somebody who has never done squats will do squats, and now all of a sudden you've got more defined hamstrings and quads and glute after like a couple months. The same for your neck if you've never done any training around that region, and then you buy an iron neck and start doing it once a week. It really does make a difference.
Does it help with the definition of like your jaw at all?
Ooh, good question.
That's a good question. I wouldn't say our product does that.
You want to know why I think it can? How I do it? Okay. I have actually figured out. I haven't posted this yet. I'm going to, and I'll make sure that I get it to you guys. You guys do a video. I'll explain it. So what I've done, I've used the iron neck in conjunction. I've taken like 2 of your bands. I'll hook them on the neck, and then I'll use usually just the level 1 for the mouthpiece. But what I did was I got a designated ankle strap, basically hook that goes onto a cable machine, hooked it to the band, hooked it to the anchor point, folded it in half, and I bite it like a mouthpiece, and then I do them simultaneously. So when I turn, I've got the iron neck and I've got the mouthpiece in my jaw that I'm clenching on, and I will go through, usually isometrics. I'll do isometric turns facing straight ahead in the jaw. I do that as my finisher on like my very last set, just to really hit that, and that definitely hits the whole thing. Your neck, your face, your jaw, it's all working together. So that I'll do something on that because that's very unique. I've never seen anybody doing that, but that does that.
You're a true MacGyver. Yeah, we love the MacGyver ingenuity. Like I was telling you, that was the roots of the invention of this product, was just messing around with Pilates bands and how can you get this rotational movement. And yeah, so like we've tried to be pretty good listeners of our customers. I kind of talk about some of what we've heard from PTs, but in the early days especially, we would see a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, not with a mouthpiece, but connecting this to a sled and loading that up and dragging this backwards. And these were things that it's like, oh, wow, that is awesome. That's going to get some attention, but that also might scare some people away.
Yeah.
And so we're a bit more cautious in like, what we're reposting. But yeah,
you've got to make sure it stays relative for 90 the 1% of people that are going to be dragging a sled or doing it with a mouthpiece. Like, that's cool and they'll enjoy that, but yeah, you're right, you don't want this to seem like it's a elite athlete equipment piece only.
Yeah. And what doesn't really change between grandma and the elite fighter or athlete is the functionality of the neck.
Mm-hmm.
The neck moves the same way. It's a completely different scope, right? So, obviously, like the extreme things, you're not going to have anyone doing. But I'll tell you, there's a concussion doctor in Austin who has sent multiple NFL players to us to get an iron neck, because even though these guys have straight up tree trunks for necks, they've got really weak, deep neck flexors. And I'm telling, like, it's shocking to see an NFL player struggle with like 10 pounds on the resistance band for, like a minute, minute and a half into an iron neck exercise. And it's, these guys can probably do a harness for days.
Yeah, flexion extension over and over.
Yeah, or four-way neck machine. But when you have iron neck on and you turn 360 degrees, there's an element that this actually helps diagnose weaknesses in the chain, right? Or at least catch where they are, because you're going to feel it. And if you're a trained eye, you can see when adjustments are going to be made. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's been very interesting to see that in what you'd think is like the strongest necks in the world, but there's so many muscles in the neck, right? And if you're only
How many are there? Do you know? At one point I knew. For everyone listening, I used to know. Let me look. Go ahead. How many muscles are in the neck? That's a good one, actually.
27. If I'm wrong, you can edit that.
I thought it was in the 20s. Muscles.
27, Bob.
20. More than 20.
All right, that's right.
Oh, well, that doesn't really help us. It was more than 20? Come on, man. You couldn't give us an exact number. How many muscles are in the neck? Let's see if this does it. Of course it doesn't just say.
Do you guys ever see that viral video? It's some dude in like Russia. He was like a taxi driver, and he put bands behind his headrest in his car. So whenever he would drive, he's just going like this the whole time.
No.
Dude's neck was a tree trunk.
I love
it. It'd be cool if one of the iterations for Iron Neck was like passenger side. You could sit in the car and you could do your
just prep for when the driver crashes.
Yeah.
I will sometimes actually wear it during a meeting. I mean, I work remote.
Yeah.
So, if I'm sitting outside, I basically have it set up on a pillar, and I'll just have it. I'll use the lighter band because I'm planning to kind of sit with this on my head for like 10 minutes. But it just feels great.
Yeah.
And we used to joke, if you ever saw like the Will Ferrell, Harry Carey skits, where he's, after you take this thing off from using it, your head is super light and you're just kind of like doing the Harry Carey scene.
Seriously.
But yeah, it's
you could never get in trouble for wearing that in the meeting either if you work for Iron Neck.
Yeah, I was safe.
I was safe. If someone wanted to get this, where would they go?
They go to our website, iron-neck.com.
Perfect. And then the website and the Instagram, The Iron Neck is the Instagram, yeah?
The Iron Neck.
Lot of good education coming out of that. A lot of great education on the IG. I gotta say that too. Kudos on that front for sure. Hey man, Thanks for coming in. Seriously, this is such I think a very important topic. A lot of people don't address this until it's too late. You've had an injury and now you're having to backpedal. So I like this. I think it's a great product. You guys got something real special here.
No, I appreciate it. And I always love coming in to see, like, if you're following a gym on Instagram and you kind of see it, but to finally actually get there and like see the lay of the land here.
Yeah.
I mean, you open the front door and you are here. And then what nobody's going to know is that the toilet paper holder is Thor's hammer.
That's true.
I mean, this place is
head to toe,
head to toe, and everything in between.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
All right, buddy. We'll call it right there. Thank you guys so much for watching that episode of Becoming the 1% podcast. If you like the content and you want to see more of it, hit the like and subscribe. Activate that notification bell as well. We really appreciate it. If you guys want to see more of it, we actually have the Becoming the 1% Instagram, and the podcast is available on Spotify. For our socials, we have Strict Vision Athletics on Instagram, we have it on YouTube, and we have it on TikTok.